Memphis, Tennessee. Graceland. January 8, 1974. Elvis Presley's 39th birthday. The house is decorated for celebration, but by the end of this day, there will be nothing to celebrate. Today is the day Elvis discovers that for nearly 20 years, he has been living a lie. It starts with something innocent. Elvis is in his father Vernon's office at Graceland, looking for a pen to sign some fan mail. Vernon is out running errands, and Elvis needs to get these autographs done before his birthday guests arrive. Elvis opens the desk drawer and sees a manila folder marked Private, VP Only. His father's initials, Vernon Presley. Elvis has never been one to pry into his father's business, but something about the folder catches his attention. It's thick, stuffed with documents, and it's been shoved toward the back of the drawer like someone didn't want it to be found easily. Elvis hesitates. Vernon has always handled the business side of things, working closely with Colonel Parker to manage Elvis's career and finances. Elvis has been happy to let them take care of the details while he focuses on the music. But lately, there have been strange conversations, hushed phone calls between Vernon and the Colonel, worried looks when they think Elvis isn't watching. Elvis picks up the folder. The first document he sees makes his blood run cold. This is creative storytelling inspired by the documented financial disputes and questionable business practices that characterized Elvis's relationship with Colonel Tom Parker throughout their 20-year partnership. The document is a contract dated December 1955. Elvis recognizes it immediately. It's the management agreement he signed with Colonel Parker when he was just 20 years old and desperate for someone to help him navigate the music business that was suddenly interested in the boy from Memphis. But this isn't the contract Elvis remembers signing. That contract gave Colonel Parker 25% of Elvis's earnings, already a high percentage for a manager, but Elvis had been grateful to have someone with Colonel's connections and experience guiding his career. The contract in the folder shows a different number, 50%. Elvis stares at the document, certain he's misreading something, but the numbers are clear, written in Colonel Parker's distinctive handwriting. 50% of all earnings to Thomas Andrew Parker, 25% to Elvis Aaron Presley, 25% to cover expenses and Vernon's salary. Elvis has been getting a quarter of his own money for 20 years. His hands shaking, Elvis continues through the folder. The next document is a letter from RCA Records dated 1956. It's addressed to Colonel Parker, not to Elvis, and it outlines the financial terms of Elvis's record deal. According to this letter, RCA is paying Elvis $40,000 as an advance against future royalties. But Elvis remembers being told he was getting $15,000. Where did the other $25,000 go? Elvis finds out 3 pages later. A bank deposit slip showing $25,000 being deposited into an account belonging to T.A. Parker Enterprises on the same day Elvis signed his RCA contract. The folder is full of documents like this. Hidden contracts, altered agreements, bank statements showing money being diverted away from Elvis and into accounts controlled by Colonel Parker. There are letters from promoters offering Elvis massive sums for international tours, all rejected by the Colonel, with form letters claiming Mr. Presley is not available for international engagements at this time. Elvis realizes he's never seen these offers. He's always wondered why he's never toured outside North America, why his international fan base has been built entirely on records and movies, while other major artists regularly tour Europe, Asia, and Australia. The answer is in a letter from the U.S. Immigration Service dated 1957. It's addressed to Thomas Andrew Parker, Andreas Van Kook, and it details concerns about Mr. Parker's immigration status and the potential consequences of leaving the United States. Andreas Van Kook.
Elvis has never heard that name before. According to this letter, Colonel Tom Parker was born in the Netherlands and may not be a legal U.S. citizen. The letter warns that if he leaves the country, he may not be allowed to return. Elvis suddenly understands. The colonel hasn't been keeping Elvis in America to build his domestic career. He's been keeping Elvis in America because he can't leave himself. And every time Elvis has asked about touring internationally, the colonel has found ways to make it seem like a bad business decision. How many millions of dollars in international touring revenue has Elvis lost because his manager can't legally travel? Elvis continues reading. The financial documents paint a picture of systematic theft that goes back to the very beginning of his career. Movie contracts where the colonel negotiated higher percentages for himself than for Elvis. Merchandising deals where Elvis gets a small fraction while the colonel takes the majority. Even song publishing arrangements where the colonel owns pieces of Elvis's creative work. But the most devastating document is near the bottom of the folder. It's a debt statement showing that as of December 1973, Elvis Presley owes Colonel Parker $2.4 million. Elvis reads this 3 times before it sinks in. According to this document, Elvis doesn't just owe the colonel money, he owes him so much money that even with his massive earnings, he's essentially an indentured servant. How is that possible? Elvis's concerts sell out, his records go gold and platinum, his movies make millions. Where is all that money going? The answer is in the fine print of contracts that Elvis never fully understood. The colonel has been loaning money to Elvis at high interest rates, using Elvis's future earnings as collateral. Every time Elvis wanted to buy something expensive, Graceland, cars, jewelry, generous gifts for friends and family, the colonel arranged the financing, but the terms were designed to keep Elvis in debt forever. It's a system designed to ensure that no matter how much money Elvis makes, he can never be financially independent enough to fire his manager. Elvis sits in Vernon's chair, surrounded by 20 years of evidence that the man he trusted most in the business world has been systematically stealing from him and manipulating him. The magnitude of the betrayal is overwhelming. Elvis has always known that the colonel is tough, demanding, and sometimes manipulative, but Elvis thought they were partners. He thought the colonel's aggressive tactics were designed to maximize Elvis's success, not to enrich the colonel at Elvis's expense. The sound of car doors slamming in the driveway jolts Elvis back to reality. Vernon is home, probably with Colonel Parker. They're coming to set up for Elvis's birthday party. Elvis quickly stuffs the documents back into the folder and puts it back in the drawer. He needs time to think, to process what he's learned, to figure out what to do next. Vernon walks into the office, followed by Colonel Parker. The colonel is carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing the expensive suit that Elvis now realizes Elvis probably paid for. "Happy birthday, my boy," said the colonel in his distinctive accent. 39 years old and still the most famous entertainer in the world. Elvis looks at the colonel, this man who has shaped his career, controlled his life, and stolen his money for 20 years, and tries to act normal. "Thanks, Colonel," Elvis says, his voice sounding strange even to himself. Vernon notices immediately. "You feeling all right, son? You look pale." Elvis forces a smile. "Just tired. Long night in the studio." The colonel studies Elvis's face with the calculating expression of someone who's built a career on reading people and situations. Colonel Parker didn't become one of the most powerful managers in the entertainment industry by accident. He's survived in a cutthroat business by being smarter, tougher, and more ruthless than almost everyone around him. "Elvis," the colonel says slowly, "you seem upset about something. What's troubling you?" For a moment, Elvis considers confronting him right there, throwing the evidence on the desk and demanding answers. But something stops him. Maybe it's 20 years of conditioning to let the colonel handle business matters. Maybe it's the shock of discovering that his entire career has been built on lies. Or maybe it's the realization that he needs to understand the full scope of the betrayal before he acts. "I'm fine, Colonel," Elvis says. "Just birthday blues, getting older." The Colonel nods, but his eyes never leave Elvis's face. "Well, we'll have none of that. Tonight is celebration. I've arranged for some of your favorite people to join us, and I have a special birthday present for you. A new contract for a series of shows in Las Vegas that will be the most lucrative of your career." Another contract. Elvis wonders what hidden clauses this one contains, what percentage of his own money he'll actually see. The party that night is surreal. Elvis goes through the motions, cutting cake, opening presents, laughing at jokes, but his mind is consumed by what he discovered in Vernon's office. Every time he looks at the Colonel, he sees
Not his trusted manager, but a man who has been stealing from him for 20 years. The Colonel, meanwhile, works the room like the master showman he is. He tells stories about Elvis's early career, jokes about their adventures together, and paints himself as the architect of Elvis's success. The guests hang on his every word, and several people make comments about how lucky Elvis is to have such a dedicated manager. Elvis watches it all with new eyes. The Colonel isn't celebrating Elvis's birthday. He's celebrating his own success at manipulating everyone in the room, including Elvis. After the guests leave, Elvis retreats to his bedroom and starts making phone calls. He calls his lawyer, his accountant, and several music industry contacts. He doesn't tell them what he's discovered, but he starts asking questions about standard industry practices, typical management percentages, and how other major artists structure their business relationships. What he learns makes everything worse. 50% is unheard of for a management fee. 25% is considered high. Most top-tier artists pay their managers 10 to 15%. Elvis has been paying more than 3 times the industry standard. Moreover, legitimate managers don't typically own pieces of their clients' creative work, don't control every aspect of their clients' careers, and don't put their clients into debt to maintain control over them. Over the next several weeks, Elvis conducts a secret investigation into his own career. He hires a private forensic accountant to review 20 years of financial records. He consults with entertainment lawyers about the legality of his contracts with the Colonel. He even hires a private investigator to research the Colonel's background and immigration status. The results are devastating. The forensic accountant estimates that Elvis has been cheated out of at least $50 million over the course of his career. The lawyers tell him that many of his contracts with the Colonel would likely be ruled invalid if challenged in court due to conflicts of interest and deceptive practices. The private investigator confirms that Colonel Parker is indeed an illegal immigrant who has been living under a false identity for decades. But the most shocking discovery comes when Elvis learns about all the opportunities he's missed. The forensic accountant shows him documentation of international tour offers that would have earned Elvis hundreds of millions of dollars, record deals with better terms that the Colonel rejected without consulting Elvis, movie offers for serious dramatic roles that could have established Elvis as a legitimate actor, not just a musical performer. The Colonel hasn't just stolen Elvis's money, he's stolen Elvis's potential. Armed with this information, Elvis decides to confront the Colonel, but he wants to do it strategically, not in anger. He wants to give the Colonel a chance to explain, and possibly to make things right. The confrontation happens on February 15, 1974, in the Colonel's office at RCA Records in Nashville. Elvis arrives unannounced, carrying a briefcase full of evidence. The Colonel is surprised to see him. "Elvis, what brings you to Nashville? I thought you were taking a break before the next Vegas run." "We need to talk, Colonel," Elvis says, his voice deadly serious, "about our business relationship." The Colonel's expression immediately becomes guarded. He's been in the entertainment business long enough to recognize the tone of voice that comes before ultimatums. "Of course," the Colonel says. "What's on your mind?"
Elvis opens his briefcase and starts laying documents on the colonel's desk, the altered contracts, the hidden financial statements, the immigration papers, the evidence of missed opportunities. I know about Andreas Van Quyck. I know about the 50%. I know about the debt arrangements. I know about the international tours you've been rejecting. I know all of it, Colonel. The colonel looks at the documents spread across his desk, and for the first time in their 20-year relationship, Elvis sees him look genuinely afraid. Elvis, the colonel begins, I can explain all of this. Everything I've done has been for your benefit. My benefit? Elvis's voice rises slightly. Taking 50% of my earnings is for my benefit? Keeping me in debt so I can never fire you is for my benefit? Lying to me about international opportunities because you're afraid of being deported is for my benefit? The colonel straightens up, and Elvis sees a flash of the ruthless businessman who built an empire on manipulation and control. Let me tell you something, boy, the colonel says, his accent becoming more pronounced. When I found you, you were nothing. A punk kid with a guitar, playing for tips at church socials. I made you the biggest star in the world. Everything you have, everything you are, you owe to me. And you've made sure I can never forget it, haven't you? By structuring everything so I'm always in debt to you, always dependent on you, always under your control. The colonel leans back in his chair. The entertainment business is complicated, Elvis. You never wanted to understand the details. You were happy to let me handle everything while you played with your music. Well, this is what handling everything looks like. This is what theft looks like. This is what betrayal looks like. For several minutes, the two men stare at each other across the desk. 20 years of partnership, of shared success, of mutual dependence, hanging in the balance. Finally, the colonel speaks. What do you want, Elvis? What is this confrontation supposed to accomplish? I want my career back. I want control over my own business decisions. I want fair percentages going forward, and I want you to make restitution for what you've stolen from me. The colonel laughs, but there's no humor in it. And if I refuse, then I'll file lawsuits that will destroy both of us. I'll go public with everything I've learned. I'll expose the Andreas Van Quyck identity, the illegal immigration status, the fraudulent contracts. It will ruin your reputation and probably get you deported, but it will also tie up my career in legal proceedings for years. Mutually assured destruction, the colonel muses. You're learning, boy. You're finally thinking like a businessman. I'm thinking like someone who's tired of being cheated. The colonel considers this for a long moment. Then he opens his own briefcase and pulls out a thick folder. Let me show you something, Elvis, he says. These are all the offers you've received in the past 5 years that I've turned down without telling you about them. Bad movie scripts, tours with inadequate security, record deals with companies that would have exploited you, foreign promoters with questionable reputations and no guarantees of payment. For every opportunity I've declined for my own reasons, I've declined 10 more to protect you from making mistakes that would have hurt your career. Elvis looks through the folder. There are indeed dozens of offers that seem questionable or potentially damaging. You see, the colonel continues, management isn't just about taking percentages and booking shows. It's about protecting the artist from an industry full of people who want to exploit them. Yes, I've taken large percentages. Yes, I've structured our relationship to ensure my own security. But I've also made you wealthy and famous beyond your wildest dreams, while protecting you from countless people who would have used and discarded you. But you've also stolen from me, Elvis says. You've lied to me. You've manipulated me. How am I supposed to trust anything you say? The colonel nods slowly. You're right, I have done those things, and I did them because I learned early in this business that if you're not completely in control of a situation, someone else will take control of a situation. I've controlled your career because I couldn't afford to let anyone else control it, including you. Including me? "Elvis, you're a genius musician and performer, but you're terrible at business. You give away money like it's water. You trust people who don't deserve it. You make decisions based on emotion rather than strategy. If I hadn't controlled your finances, you would have been broke within 5 years of becoming famous." Elvis wants to argue, but he knows there's truth in what the Colonel is saying. Elvis has always been generous to a fault, always willing to help friends and family with money, always making impulsive purchases without considering long-term financial implications. "But that doesn't give you the right to steal from me," Elvis says. "That doesn't give you the right to lie to me about my own career." "No," the Colonel agrees, "it doesn't, and I'm sorry for that. But I'm not sorry for making you the biggest entertainer in the world, and I'm not sorry for making both of us very wealthy in the process." The confrontation continues for 3 hours. They argue about money, about control, about trust and betrayal. They revisit 20 years of shared history, examining decisions and consequences from both perspectives. By the end of it, both men are exhausted. They've reached an understanding, but not a resolution. Elvis knows he can't continue with things as they are, but he also understands that completely severing his relationship with the Colonel could be financially and professionally catastrophic. The Colonel knows that he's been caught, that his methods have been exposed, but he also knows that Elvis needs him more than Elvis wants to admit. They reach a compromise that satisfies neither of them completely, but allows them to continue working together. The Colonel agrees to reduce his percentage to 35% going forward and to give Elvis more input into business decisions. Elvis agrees not to pursue legal action over past financial arrangements, but reserves the right to end the relationship with 6 months' notice. It's not the complete victory Elvis wanted, but it's better than the complete subjugation he'd been living under. However, the damage to their relationship is permanent. The trust that had sustained their partnership for 20 years is gone. Elvis now views every decision the Colonel makes with suspicion, and the Colonel knows that
Elvis is actively looking for ways to reduce his dependence on their partnership. The tension between them affects every aspect of Elvis's career going forward. Business decisions that used to be made quickly now involve lengthy negotiations. The creative partnership that had produced some of Elvis's best work becomes strained and adversarial. Elvis starts making plans for a future without the Colonel. He begins building relationships with other industry professionals, exploring opportunities that don't require the Colonel's involvement, and gradually reducing his financial dependence on their business arrangement. The Colonel, meanwhile, becomes more controlling and manipulative than ever, knowing that his hold on Elvis is slipping. He starts booking Elvis for more shows, pushing him to work harder and more frequently to maximize earnings while he still can. The stress of this deteriorating relationship, combined with Elvis's existing struggles with prescription drugs and personal relationships, begins to take a serious toll on his physical and mental health. Friends and family members notice that Elvis becomes more paranoid, more suspicious of people's motives, more convinced that everyone around him is trying to use him for something. The discovery of the Colonel's betrayal has shattered Elvis's ability to trust anyone completely. The financial investigation also reveals the full extent of Elvis's debt and financial obligations. Despite earning hundreds of millions of dollars over his career, Elvis's actual liquid wealth is much less than most people assume. The Colonel's debt arrangements, combined with Elvis's generous spending habits, have created a situation where Elvis must continue working at an intense pace just to maintain his lifestyle and meet his financial obligations. This realization is devastating for Elvis. At 39 years old, he discovers that despite being one of the most successful entertainers in history, he is essentially trapped in a cycle of debt and dependency that makes it impossible for him to retire or significantly reduce his workload. The birthday that was supposed to be a celebration becomes the beginning of the end for Elvis Presley. The knowledge of how completely he's been betrayed and manipulated destroys something essential in his spirit.
The joy he once found in performing becomes overshadowed by the understanding that every show, every record, every appearance is partly about paying money to a man who has stolen from him for decades. Elvis's drug use, which had previously been manageable, becomes more frequent and more dangerous as he tries to cope with the emotional pain of betrayal and the physical exhaustion of a work schedule designed to maximize the Colonel's profits rather than Elvis's well-being. The final 3 years of Elvis's life are marked by this ongoing conflict with the Colonel. Elvis becomes increasingly desperate to find a way out of their business relationship, but the Colonel's control over his career and finances makes it nearly impossible to break free completely. In 1977, just months before his death, Elvis was still trying to extricate himself from the Colonel's control. He had hired new lawyers and was exploring options for buying out the Colonel's interests in his career. But the financial and legal complexities made it a slow process, and Elvis ran out of time. When Elvis died on August 16, 1977, Colonel Tom Parker immediately moved to secure his financial interests in the Elvis estate. The man who had controlled Elvis's career for 22 years was determined to continue controlling his legacy. This story is creative fiction, inspired by the documented financial disputes and control issues that characterized Elvis's relationship with Colonel Tom Parker. While the specific confrontation described here is imagined, it represents the kind of reckonings that many artists have had with managers who prioritize their own interests over their clients' well-being. The truth about Elvis and the Colonel is complex. Colonel Parker did help make Elvis famous, and he did protect Elvis from many potential problems and bad deals. But he also took advantage of Elvis's trust and inexperience to structure a business relationship that was far more beneficial to the manager than to the artist. The 50% fee was indeed unprecedented in the industry. His control over Elvis's career was absolute. His inability to travel internationally due to immigration issues did cost Elvis millions in potential earnings, and the debt arrangements he created did keep Elvis financially dependent on continuing to work. Whether Elvis ever fully understood the extent of the Colonel's control and manipulation is unclear, but it's certain that their business relationship was more complex and problematic than it appeared to the public. The story of Elvis and Colonel Parker serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of artists maintaining control over their own careers and finances. It illustrates how talent and success are not enough to protect someone from exploitation if they don't understand the business side of their industry. For Elvis Presley, the cost of trusting the wrong person with his career was more than just financial. It was the loss of artistic freedom, creative control, and ultimately the ability to shape his own legacy. If this story made you think about the business side of artistic success, about the importance of understanding contracts and financial arrangements, I need you to do something right now. Subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because next week we're exploring another hidden truth about the music industry that will change how you think about fame and fortune. Drop a comment and tell me, should artists be required to understand the business side of their careers, or should they be able to trust managers and agents to have their best interests at heart? Share this video with any artist, musician, or creative person you know. Let them understand that talent is only part of the equation. Protecting yourself and your work is equally important. Because here's the truth that Elvis's story teaches us. No one will protect your interests better than you will. Trust is important, but understanding and oversight are essential. The music is bigger than any of us, but the business of music, that's something every artist needs to understand, whether they want to or not. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the dark side of the music industry. I'll see you in the next one, where we'll uncover another truth that powerful people don't want artists to know. Remember, talent creates art, but knowledge protects artists. Never sign anything you don't understand, and never give anyone complete control over your career. Thanks for watching.